Hey, Mark here, and I have a very random giveaway for you. I have some extra digital copies of 80 for Brady, and if you would love to win a copy, just shoot me a message and say, hey, Mark, I would like to enter my name for the 80 for Brady raffle, and there's a chance you could win. So yeah, get early access to 80 for Brady on digital today. Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda, and Fast 10's Rita Moreno, and Sally Field. She's not in Fast 10, but like she's still cool. Stars four best friends who go on an unforgettable journey to see their hero Tom Brady play in Super Bowl 51 in this hilarious comedy about living life to the fullest, no matter your age. Directed by Kyle Marvin, 80 for Brady is on digital now. Available at participating retailers, rated PG-13 from Paramount Pictures. Yeah, so shoot me a message. Let me know if you want a copy of 80 for Brady. Now enjoy this No Time to Die episode. Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who eats brains like jam and considers 200-pound deadlifts to be like fleas on a wolf. It's John Levingood.
So clearly we're going to be talking about the monkey brain dining scene in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom today.
I mean, if you think about it, you have Tom Cruise watching and Gump watching as Lily and Darkness are down there about to sacrifice somebody. It's very Raiders of the Lost. It's very Temple of Doom.
I actually made that reference while watching it last night.
Whoa!
While the hooded monks are holding down the chained unicorn, right, in the chaos, and Darkness just has his arms outstretched, kind of like that dark priest of Kali, right? And there's just the fires going, and you're in this kind of cavernous, like, I don't know what to call it, cult altar.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was specifically brought up.
The whole thing just got me thinking about 80s fantasy films and 80s movies. And we can get to that later. We can tackle Legend first. But it's just watching that scene and and also, okay, there are those guards there who make the food and they cook human pies, basically human and kidney pie.
The orc butchers.
So instead of shepherd's pie, it's orc butcher pie. And so, okay, where do they get cheese from?
When the orcs lactate. How gross would that be? That would be perfect.
Orc lactation cheese.
Or maybe they got it the same way that Immortan Joe got it.
Yeah.
He has a bevy of like slave women on like breast pumps.
So you're saying Darkness's lair has an Immortan Joe milk pumping area to make gigantic slabs of cheese?
I believe it, because I was wondering how big his house staff is. We see evidence of a lot of house staff.
Yeah.
I don't know about if those cultists are actually house staff or if what I perceived as cultists were actually just monks that managed the fermentory in the west wing of his bog castle.
Yes.
And we see these two orc butchers. We see this little person kind of watchman sentinel. There are other creatures about in his place. And by the way, because he was trying to show her gifts and get her to like him, that initial dancing figure wearing the black mask and wearing the dress that would then magically end up on Lily, I always before just assumed that this was just all like a spell. But if it was just a spell, why wouldn't he, when he calls to his father to ask how to make Lily love him, spells? No, it's not spells. It's like, here's some presents. So I'm wondering if that was his dance instructor on staff witch.
Yeah, I mean, she must be, because you got to have them. In every grand evil palace, you need a ballet instructor to teach evil dances. Because, I mean,
it's more contemporary, though. It's probably like a pure bar class.
Yeah, I mean, ooh, that'd be nice. You know the workout there?
I'm
Wow.
familiar. I have not done it with my plus size self, but
Yeah, you and I would pull something. We would give it our all. But you know how many like one-legged squats there are in that? I mean, you might be fine, but I'd be laying on the ground in just a pile of sweat.
we would shatter our big toes when we try and do those toe stands.
Yeah. it's okay, so we have dance instructors in there. We have chairs that are kind of alive. We have that little goblin pit that you should never go into because little like evil creatures pop out and try to get you. There's really nice chimneys that
Oh,
lead
you
to
mean
the
the things that burst out of the
yeah.
ground?
There's
Yeah.
like who are they? Are they a security system?
So
Is that like
right,
Brinks?
sometimes you gotta wonder because this is such a Dungeons and Dragons esque movie as well. If maybe there are just wings of the castle that are generally untraversed for 100 years at a time, and there's almost like an infestation of local flora and fauna, or in this case, some like kind of feral goblin-like squatters had made their way in there, and normally they're just eating rats or something that go down the hall.
Oh yeah. So they're just squatting there because there's so many rooms.
I mean, something like that. They're uninhabited for so long, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hand waving here.
It's a gnarly world that he lives in. And you know what's interesting too? Event Horizon's one of our favorite episodes that we've recorded.
Oh,
And we've also recorded Legend. In both those movies, the Bond stage got lit on fire. Because remember in Event Horizon, they lit one of the Pinewood stages on fire. And then in this one, the main Bond stage legitimately burnt down to the ground. A cavernous stage burnt down to the ground, and Ridley Scott went and played tennis because he's like, well, we're not going to do anything else today. So he went and played tennis to burn all the anxiety off. But yeah, and then also we've talked about Bram Stoker's Dracula, those are three movies combined that have beautiful soundstage design and sets. Like we're talking like, I'm just going to say it. I don't care, John. Like all timer as far as maybe like horror and genre sets. You have the Gravity Drive and Event Horizon, everything in Bram Stoker. And then in this movie, the gigantic forest set that is just chicken
with
feathers
that
everywhere.
cliff,
Yeah, and
the
just
water.
you can dive off waterfalls, like really beautiful, very windy, a lot of pollen it looks like, but just beautiful bombed by light sets. And then you have cavernous hellscapes. And it's just, I don't know, I found that interesting, John, that you and I sort of have a trio of cult classic horror films that have beautiful, gigantic, grand sets.
We do have fantastic taste.
Yeah, we do. And I was thinking about Ridley Scott, dude. Like, so he started with Duelist, and then he went on to Alien, and then he went on to Blade Runner, and then Legend. And I mean, if you think about the architecture in Alien, the space jockey, then you go to the set design and costumes in Blade Runner, and then you go to Darkness in the Rob Bottin created Devil and voiced by played by Tim Curry. Like he went 3 for 3 with iconic, like legitimately iconic imagery. Because I think Darkness now, if like even if you don't like Legend, you got to know that Tim Curry and that Rob Bottin work is immaculate. It is beautiful to look at. So Ridley Scott really has he and Tony Scott, they're both artists, so you could really tell their eye in this movie. And I think that's why this movie like is still around, John, because of Darkness and just the vibe of it. And I don't know, but you have much more of a history with this movie than I do. So what's your history with this flick?
Well, so I got into so my uncle, my closest uncle, got me into Dungeons and Dragons when I was probably 9, and my cousin, his son, was 7. So fantasy movies and movies in general, he got us into movies and he got us into Dungeons and Dragons. So right out of the gates, this is a winner, right? Columbia House, I've brought it up before. Columbia House VHS Club.
Yeah.
He had this like probably in the early 90s or mid 90s, whenever that kind of built up steam. And this is one of those movies that we probably watched at his house like a couple times a year in an era of no streaming, in an era where movie collections weren't yet big, even in VHS. And so again, I probably saw this a couple times a year from age 10 to 20.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean,
and then after that, just speckled about.
it's an easy watch too because we're not talking about the director's cut. We're not talking about the like European cut, which was longer and didn't introduce darkness until an hour in, and it didn't feature the smooching in the beginning either. The kiss was at the end. It was much more of an innocent like it's in the American cut, in the U.S. cut, Ridley Scott took that butchering footage and brought it to the beginning. He's like, Americans want action. They want action and smooching. And then he legitimately said that like a lot of UK audiences are more patient and they'll put up with more ethereal, longer shots. So there's two different cuts. And so I listened to a clip today just about comparing the two different cuts. But if we just look at the one released here in the States, it's 90 minutes. And the beginning credits are 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. The end credits are 5 minutes. So when you knock this movie down, it's 80 minutes. So it's a very easy watch. And it moves so fast once it gets going. I mean, this movie does not waste time. And to think that was originally 2 hours and 10 minutes. And then they cut it all the way down. But once again with Nightbreed, John, I'm sure the longer cut's great. But this movie moves at such a clip. And it's just so easy to follow. And the visuals are so great. And for me, this movie's more about mood than it is. People are going to think I'm insane, but for me, it's more about mood and tone and style than it is the story. I mean, you get the story. So I think the 90-minute cut works just fine for me.
The story is extremely basic.
Incredibly basic.
If you really boil down to the story points, this is a story that you shot from the hip that you one day will come up with to tell your daughter when she's 4 years old to go to bed. And you're just going to come up with like 4 or 5 bullet points of the story, and you're just going to say the bullet points, and that's the whole plot. Yeah. It's really basic.
I mean, what was the IMDb thing makes me laugh. It goes, Jack. Let's see. I was just reading it. It says, a young man must stop the Lord of Darkness from destroying daylight and marrying the woman he loves. Which that doesn't really make sense either.
That's decidedly misleading.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I was like, wait, what is that? I think they're just leaning into the Tom Cruise of it all. And by the way, I've had to watch every single Tom Cruise movie twice since 2018. No, 3 times since 2018. So his entire filmography I've watched 3 times. And I can say without a doubt that this is his most tumble heavy role. He does
It's also his most crotch shot heavy role.
He just leans into this. But his tumbles and gymnastics in this movie, he does so much rolling, tucking, and diving. This is his dodgeball. He dives, ducks, dips, dodges, and dives. Most movies he runs, but I've never ever seen him do anything similar to this, ever. This is a very tumble-heavy role.
He is doing cartwheels and flips like a gratuitous role in a cop movie.
Yeah. Like he's doing that stand-up in slow motion in Michael Bay movies. Like that's how prevalent it is. But yeah, I was watching this again. There's so many dip, ducks, and dives and dodges. But going back to this, 90 minutes, it's just like a unicorn. One unicorn's taken. The other one's then darkness is going to rule over all. And Tom Cruise and some fairies and some other people have to go save Lily. But Lily kind of has it in the bag as well. She knows what she's doing. She actually tricks darkness. Mm-hmm. So yeah, very simple concept. But for me, John, this movie leaves my brain really quickly, but I feel like what it does best is the tone. It was originally scored by Jerry Goldsmith, but the Tangerine Dream score I really dig. I love their Sorcerer score. I love their Near Dark score. But yeah, for me, this is just a movie about just the vibe, the tone. Like, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the story is not really important to me. It's more about the overall feeling I get while watching it and the look.
I think if we were to analyze the points of the story, the more it all kind of breaks down into the haphazardness of the success of Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. And also, if you compare the two cuts, in the director's cut, Gump makes Jack solve a riddle for forgiveness. Now, in the theatrical cut, that's not there. Gump is just upset with what happened, but he's like, okay, we got to solve this together. Well, what would happen if Jack got the riddle wrong? He wouldn't have had Gump's help, and then you think, oh, he just do it by himself. Well, it was Gump that led him to the shield, the armor, and the presumably magical sword. right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
these special weapons to fight a powerful evil. So if he had gotten that riddle wrong in the one cut putatively, he probably just would have died or not done anything. Just watched the last sunset.
Yeah, pretty much.
And all this happens. Not that this is a bad thing, because certain movies, like I think even like A New Hope, Star Wars Episode 4 takes place over a very short period of time, like 2 or 3 days. This movie spans not more than 2 dawns.
Mm-hmm. It moves
right?
quick.
Yeah. So this is breakneck, and once it starts, they are never stopping to take a breath. Although I feel like about 12 hours disappears in one of those days. So again, the more you really start to break it down, the more questionable, or maybe just lucky that they managed to thwart Darkness.
I mean,
because Darkness is naive when it comes to love.
And if you think about Darkness too, he's just so confident. He doesn't expect that Tom Cruise is going to come into his crib with a bunch of gold plates and chuck them like frisbees, and then set up a wildly intricate system to bring light that bombs him, and then the woman that he thinks loves him pulls a trick on him. Yeah, you're right. He's quite naive, and there's a lot of hubris there as well. But yeah, he gets played, and it's very, yeah, it's the whole like what gold saucer throwing scene, like frisbees, that just makes me laugh. But it's a weird combo, this movie, John. It's very dark. It's very, it feels like very adult-esque, but then there's some cheeky gags in there.
Well, so I can't remember the character's name, but when the goblin that's wearing the stove mask,
like Blix and his crew.
Yeah, when his like kind of armored comrade gets taken down by a mummy, by the way, that was interesting. Gets taken down the pit, and he says, "Adios, amigos." And I'm watching that, and I look at my girlfriend right next to me. I'm like, so some people speak Spanish in this world.
That's a director's fantasy world. That's a director's cut then.
No, it's in both cuts.
Oh wait, when the mummy pulls him down, I've watched this 3 times in the last days. Why is that scene not stuck with me?
Yeah. So when Darkness comes to claim the unicorn horn.
Oh yeah.
And then Blix kind of haphazardly, like deliberately drops the unicorn horn, like, oh no, I wasn't doing anything with it. Then that steam oven like masked helmed guy picks it up and is saying like, I'm gonna rule now. And then Darkness animates this mummy-like thing on the ground, which grabs his leg, picks him up, jumps down a pit, and he says, "Adios, amigos," and he does it in both cuts.
Oh, see, I'm telling you, this movie, and I'm sorry if you're listening to this, I really have, like, listen, you know, I rented the thing, I listened to the commentary by Ridley Scott, I listened to the making of documentaries, I like the comparison of the cuts, but this movie feels like a weird fever dream for me.
By the way, that same scene, right after that happens, Blix looks up at Darkness and says, "Wow." Like it's something out of an Adam Sandler movie that Steve Buscemi would say. Like it's this. It is like you said. Not that a goblin can't have awkward, nervous humor, right? But that is so a contemporary response. And Adios Amigos is such an earthly, present day. Statement, right? Or our lifetime statement. It's like there are a couple weird things like that happen.
It's supposed to be this super kind of fairy tale-esque movie, but yeah, then Adios Amigos. And there are other lines too where you're kind of like, wait a second, what was this said? But I guess that's kind of fun. I think that maybe gives it some character. I think, yeah, I mean, like Meg Mucklebones, like she delivers one of my favorite lines in this movie when what does she say? Oh, you don't plan on eating me? Oh, indeed I do.
Dude, that was such a deliciously, appropriately melodramatic performance by Robert Picardo.
Yeah.
But I always loved that. I learned like when I was probably 12 or 15. It's like that's the dude from the Star Trek movies, like because he was in two. He was in like First Contact and one of the other ones. And in my head, he was in TNG, but he wasn't. But yeah, this guy plays this role of this hag. And in Dungeons and Dragons, by the way, hags are a major component if you don't play fantasy role-playing games. And this doesn't just mean witches. They're almost these ogreish monstrosities. closer to the witches in the remake of Clash of the Titans than the original Clash of the Titans.
Got it.
So they're monstrous. They look like if they got a hold of you, they could tear a grown man apart. And so this depiction is wonderful with the hunchback and the kind of awkward side boob of it that you see, and how it kind of reels its whole body goes around like a weeble wobble as it's it's just seething and basking in its own evil, just like Tim Curry in his monologues. But again, it's so rich in fantasy. You know, you mentioned before, like, there are these funny moments that don't fit, but still, as weird as this movie is, if you dissect its components, it is, from the opening scene, at least more so in the theatrical cut, in my opinion, the director's cut for the music, but it's very instantly immersive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You are dipped in fantasy and you cannot wipe it off.
Yeah.
You're there. And you mentioned how there's all this pollen in the air. Almost every shot, there's forest debris when it's windy. They're all, and it's not like in a movie where it's raining and you can, if you look really close, you can tell it's like 3 lines of rain.
I hate terrible movie rain.
It's so three-dimensional. There's so much debris. It makes me think about doing multiple takes. Good Lord. There's so much debris, the snow, the rain, the glitter, the pollen-like stuff, the dust. When the things explode out of the ground, there's already a haze of dust. Now there are these other little plumes of dust. Like I can't even imagine the level of work that goes into that. But it really, it's almost like you can smell or choke on that dust or that pollen. It's really visually satisfying.
What Mia Sara said that she still, and she was talking about so many chicken feathers in her that she was going to, like, she still has them inside her system all these years later, which makes me laugh. She actually went on to Ferris Bueller and Time Cop, 2 movies I watched a lot growing up. It's like Mia Sara was there a lot growing up. I remember I bought a ticket for Time Cop and they let me in when I was 12 years old, John. The guy looked at me and was like, all right, little man. But since it's like a Ridley Scott film, I think he really leans heavily into kind of like the light and the dark. He wants to have there's no light without dark. And then, he really wants to get sort of philosophical. I mean, all this, I was writing in my notes and I had to stop, but it's just darkness. The dreams of youth are the regrets of maturity. And just all these amazing lines that he comes out with, like, we are all animals, my lady. And just watching him wax poetic while trying to woo this woman with a lot of chicken feathers in her mouth is, I don't know. Do you think this it just adds a completely different element to it? It's not. This movie's interesting, John, and you played D&D and I didn't. But when you look at Beastmaster, when you look at Red Sonja, when you look at Highlander, when you look at Conan, they're very, sword, Master of the Universe, sword, kind of, I will kill everyone and, like, hear the lamentations of their women, like. But then this one's much more maybe sensitive, much more dreamlike, much more, it doesn't lean heavy into masculinity, at least on Tom Cruise's part, because he's tumbling everywhere.
No, and all the crotch shots.
Yeah,
very
exactly.
humbling.
Yeah, and it's
there's no ego in all those crotch shots.
No, right, and there's no Mad Mardigan. There's no Princess Bride kind of humor. There's no Bowie from Labyrinth. There's no Mad Mardigan. There's, like, Lady Hawk. There's no Matthew Broderick talking the whole time. It's very it's like when you look at, like, Flash Gordon, all the fantasy movies that came out, this one really does stand on its own, very much so. And yes, it's part of the huge block of 80s fantasy films, but what do you think differentiates it from all of those?
It's hard to put into words, especially I'm assuming anyone listening has seen Legend more than once, and if you haven't, you need to see it. But this movie dips you in fantasy maybe better, or at least more swiftly and effectively than maybe any other movie. Willow, wonderful fantasy, high fantasy adventure, very Dungeons and Dragons, doesn't come close to literally immersing you in the fantasy. Like you're there. that you feel the tone of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's again hard to describe, but again, just the lights are scintillating. You mentioned an almost surreal quality. There's glitter in the air debris. There's even glitter on a lot of the surfaces in Darkness's palace.
Mm-hmm.
There's the chair that he eventually tries to get Lily to sit in, this huge throne-like chair. It has ooze dripping from the top of it. I'm not sure if it's in all cuts or just the theatrical cut. There's literally ooze slowly dripping down the top shoulder of it, and the ooze is glittery while still a dark gray. The surfaces of these dark stones in this ill-lit area are glittery, right? And then, of course, whenever we see treasures like the little nightstand with all the jewelry, it is scintillating. It is prismatic, right? And then when you see Jack's armor, again, just it shimmers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like visually, I need them to know this is magic without having it literally glow or have ectoplasm or some ether about it. And you just buy it, right? You're just in. This movie does that so well. And the weirdness of the scoring, again, it's a shame that the cuts are so damn different. But if you see the theatrical cut, although they're both effective for what I'm going to say, I just think that it's more on the nose with the theatrical cut by a landslide.
The Tangerine Dream, then Jerry Goldsmith?
Yes. Yeah. So, but when she goes to touch the unicorn and the music is it goes from this happy, pristine, almost this weird choral Enya to like the storm the clouds are starting to come in, and then there's this almost like the shriekish tone from the skies once it's dark, once something bad has happened, after the unicorn is struck with Blix's stinger, he calls it his blowgun. Like it really takes you there. It's not just good scoring. It's almost scoring that takes you on. I almost feel like I had a sensory response that wasn't just hearing.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
Like
yeah.
It's like the sixth sense of scoring.
And I think that's a really great point, because once again, I'm going to go back to Alien, I'm going to go back to Blade Runner, and then I'm going to go to this movie. You feel all three of those worlds. You really do. When they go into the space jockey, when they're in their spaceship, and then in Blade Runner, all those sets, like he finds a way to, like you said, you feel it. You don't just hear it, you feel it.
Right. When you see the space jockey, you don't just say, whoa, that's cool, or wow, that's weird. You just sit there quietly like, whoa.
Yeah. And he finds a way to, in this movie too, it's not, I know there's a couple modern lines, but I feel like it's one of the more, it's not really self-conscious, because, I adore Willow. That's one of the movies I grew up on, but you have a Matt Mardigan who's very much so a modern hero. Like he's just,
he's a blowhard.
Yeah, just a total blowhard. But like the movie also takes you out into the landscapes. It takes you out into the mountains. It takes you out into fields. You don't get, like, I would maybe compare this one maybe to like Excalibur with the sort of look and vibe of it. But what Ridley Scott does is he puts you all inside of sound stages, and he builds the sets to make you have that feeling. So you're not walking through some shrubs in a field. You are not looking at a castle. You're not, on location. I think that's a really wise move to just place you inside a soundstage to create a world that he has control of. And then also just add in the sort of earnestness of the characters, the way Tim Curry just handles his role, the way Tom Cruise, Tom Cruise is nothing but earnest in this movie. He's just a little, green man. And so it's, I don't know. I like that because of it. It's very high fantasy. Does that make sense? It's whereas I think some fantasy movies are a little afraid to go full fantasy. If they're fantasy, but they also got to let you know that they're cool. This is a movie that doesn't really try to be cool, if that makes sense.
Right. If you advertise too hard to the dorks, you're going to scare away the general audience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, and there's really not too much of a love story in this film. I mean, it's greatly cut down, but yeah, I don't know. It's an odd one, man. You know, a lot of people consider it to be a failure and it didn't do well in theaters, but I don't know how you sit in a theater and witness this 90 minutes and the vibe and the music and, like you said, the sixth sense of a feeling and call it a failure. I think it's more a sensory blasting experience than a cohesive thing that you really want to think about. If that, and maybe I'm being reductive when I talk about this movie.
No,
But
I mean this might be more of like the thing. It's a movie that's hard to properly advertise the gravity and
yeah,
atmosphere of what you're walking into. No matter how dire you make something seem, sometimes we're so used to being told what's dire instead of feeling what's dire. And often when you make us feel something's dire, you're just showing us something extreme, right?
hmm
Whereas really making you feel that you're living this state of discomfort is so, or this state of enchantment in this movie, right? Like I feel like I'm in this enchanted forest, but not in some happy-go-lucky way. There are dangerous things in this forest.
yes.
I'm in this fantasy. I am Ella Enchanted. However, I'm also on the menu when I'm walking through this forest, right?
Yeah, you don't want to go by those old oaks. That's for sure.
Right, or willow trees or
Yeah.
toadstool rings. That was a cute line. And that was a line that actually felt a little forced. It's like she's been going in and out of this forest all the time, but it's telling us that there are these weird fantasy things, and you're just saying plants that exist.
hmm
But why? Is it because the old oaks it might be an ent, like in Lord of the Rings, like a treant?
They have branches that'll fall on you because they're old.
Right, and like the willow trees might be referring to almost like a Dungeons and Dragons a will of the wisp, which is a dangerous, I don't know, like undead fey like glowing thing, kind of like Una is. But
Hey, we
there's-
dedicated an entire episode to trees we don't want in our front yard, John.
right, we
So
did.
go
That
back,
was in the first 50 episodes, so that was like 30 something.
go back and listen to that one.
That,
But yeah,
I want to guess that was like 35 or so.
there's a danger to this world. There is. It's some of these movies you feel it just feels kind of safe, but this one has. It does seem like danger's lurking everywhere, anywhere you go, and you know it sets her off guard too because doesn't Jack mess with her in the beginning when she's looking for him? Then he comes out and kind of scares her.
Yeah, he just gives her a little scare.
Yeah.
Typical, like, boy likes girl kind of before we're dating prank or when we're early dating prank.
And it's yeah, but I wish I could have been immersed in this movie. I don't think I've ever had an experience where huge screen, lot of lights go into this thing super earnest, if that makes sense. You I think you almost need to be on this movie's wavelength because I guess if you go into it hoping for Excalibur and then you watch it, you're gonna be like, what is this? Like you're not gonna be, Tom Cruise's fight in this movie, there's a lot of tucking and rolling and diving. It's not. I could see how people were looking for something and this wasn't it. But I feel like the people who were able to catch its wavelength dug it, if that makes sense.
Right, and it's like you said, the movie's not trying to be that. When they
No.
first say we need a hero, they say we're going to need weapons. Gump says, and Jack says, I know nothing of weapons.
Yeah.
And then he's given the weapons when he first encounters Darkness. He's holding up his shield. Darkness is battering the crap out of him, which is exactly what would happen
Yeah.
if a 60-pound man holding a shield is having a two-handed sword sized appropriately for like an 8 to 9 foot tall muscle-bound man. Yeah, it's going to knock you across the room, and it did. I'll bet his elbow is still vibrating after all that, right? But he's just getting battered around. Like he never made one moment of light success with his sword.
Not at all. It was more of a blocking. He uses athleticism as a green man to survive, not immediately go on the offensive and take out Darkness.
Yeah, I mean, when he succeeds on the items that are already legendary in the movie. The unicorn's horn and light, bespoke by Darkness. Those are the things. And the unicorn horn is really just a shock value. At first, you think it's going to be something significant. But it's almost like that opened the gate to allow the light to defeat him more appropriately. I was a little dodgy on how that was playing out.
Oh, the unicorn that he gets stabbed with? The
Yes.
unicorn? Yeah, when he throws it into his chest?
Yes.
Yeah, that's...
But when that happens, that seems to be creating. Was it that or the light itself that seemed to open up what I'll call the sky space gate vortex?
Oh, I thought so. He gets stabbed by the unicorn horn, and then the light hits him, and then it all just pops off from there. And then he's like, "Father, help me!" And because he pulls the unicorn horn out and he uses his fingers in that thing to scrape against the walls. So I think it's a combination.
Why have you forsaken me?
Yeah.
Great line.
I think he just uses. I think it's a combination of both, but I don't know why the horn entering a busted up horn entering him would cause a portal. I think when the light hit him, something happened. But
it's like cosmically banishing him.
That was a last minute ad too, so I think they were like, we got to add some action in here, so let's do some miniatures and let's chuck that darkness out of a tunnel. But it still looks cool.
Speaking of portals, it's shown a little better in the theatrical or in the director's cut than the theatrical cut. But when he not tears through or uses the mirror as a portal, just to kind of almost like to walk through a dimensional door within his own palace. That was such a cool scene. And oh my God, did I actually stop and wonder, did John Carpenter take this idea for Prince of Darkness?
I mean, had there been mirror gags before this?
But it's specifically the Prince of Darkness going through a mirror, starting with the reaching hand.
Wow.
Right? And remember the closing scene of the movie Prince of Darkness, or near the end, it has her reaching, the woman who's impregnated with the Antichrist, if you will. She's reaching towards the mirror as you see the clawed hand reaching from the other side.
And that's another episode we have on MFF.
Wonderful episode.
Prince of Darkness. That's a great call. That never crossed my mind because I think I was just so enamored with the performance and the introduction. And, that was in the UK, that was their first introduction. They didn't get Glowfinger Darkness lamenting his loneliness in the beginning. That wasn't even there. What do you think about Neon Fingered Darkness?
So, so through 2022, I was dumb, right? Through 1980s eyes, this doesn't seem crass. If you did that now, it's like the cheapest of the cheap of effects.
Yeah.
When you did that back then, I don't think that these things stood out so brazenly as a cheap ploy. I think it was not such a cheap ploy. And I think making it look, good then was much more effective. I thought for his claws, it didn't look so good as it did for his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I almost wish, though, that they had turned it from an 11 down to a 7 on the brightness.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, but it's a striking visual. And if you're introducing the character, maybe that striking visual for what I'll call our more general audience makes more sense.
And it's a bold choice, and I appreciate that about it. I mean, the darkness does change looks a little bit, but I do appreciate the fingernails. I don't care. This movie's a feel for me. This movie's a vibe for me. It's not. I don't want to sit here and we could talk about the plot points like you said, but for me, it's more about just. I don't know. I think, but those fingers in that opening, I like that they don't wait an hour to introduce darkness. I like that he's lamenting his loneliness, or it's lamenting its loneliness. I like that about darkness. And just the nails, I think it's a funky choice. And you know me, man, I'm all about funky choices in cinema.
Dude, I like that chairs pulsate in the director's cut. Like it's like an organ or something. That was wild. I'm sitting there. This is one of those movies where I have all these questions, but none of these questions frustrate me about the movie. They take me to that. Did he have this crafted by a necromancer, or did he do it? Are those the organs of people who were his enemies, and it is now necromantically animated? What would happen if Lily sat in it? Would it bewitch her or something? Or is it just a chair that is weird? I like the idea of asking myself, why are all of the goblins different? And why was one of these gnome-like elf people slowly physically turning into one in a side adventure that never gets explained.
Never explained.
Right? But he literally has one arm with 3 reptilian claws and like a furry forearm. His skin is green, right? Like greenish. He was transforming into perhaps a goblin. Are all of these goblins actually befouled, corrupted, and or desecrated fey creatures from Gump's land who were brought into temptation? Is that why they all look different?
Oof. Yeah, I mean, that could make sense. I mean, that was Tolkien too. You know, Sauron did turn elves into his followers, right, and they were corrupted. So I don't see why not.
Well,
I mean,
there's a lot of Tolkien DNA in here, and I don't mean this in some like, oh, he took the, you know, but like at one point, one of them, I think it was Brown Tom, he says, I should have stayed home. The one who is transforming into a goblin says, I left for an adventure, you know, and then it basically got out of hand, right? So we have these little bit, and then again, I look at those butchers, and distinctly the word orc comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I mean, or Gamorrean guards.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so there's a lot of Tolkien DNA in finding a magical weapon. But of course that's just classic fantasy stuff, Sword in the Stone even, right? But
Peter Pan too, right? I mean, you have the fairy that can turn tiny. You have the boy who's immortal. You have the girl that falls in love with him. You know, in the director's cut, she leaves because he's immortal and she's not. So but you know what's interesting about most fantasy? I mean, most fantasy not cannibalizes itself, but I think fantasy's been borrowing it from each other since it began, if that makes sense. So I think when you're able to do it well, you do it well, and I think this movie does it, if that makes sense. Like you can't. I don't know. I mean, so many movies borrow from each other, but yeah, I mean, I still think this movie does enough to make it's such a unique creature, man. This is such, and you know, this is what it's amazing they let him make this, Ridley Scott. I know he had Tom Cruise coming off of All the Right Moves and Risky Business, you know, but this is an expensive movie that had Pinewood, the studio, and it's not overly, like, it's not overly sexual. It's not overly violent. It's for kids and adults. But I mean, I guess this was during the phase of fantasy films being popular. But it doesn't have Bowie. There's no song numbers. It's quite bleak. It's an outlier, I think, for sure. I know I keep saying this about it, but that's why I don't know. It's such a unique experience to me. And I can count maybe on, I don't know, one hand movies that put me in a vibe like this. And this throws you into it. But I just love the visual influence of it and the cinematography. And I actually found something cool. I was looking through the cast and crew list, and I think you're going to like this. The cinematographer, Alex Thompson, he also shot, let's see, cinematographer. He also, I don't know why, but I found this. He also did Labyrinth, but then he also did Raw Deal, Leviathan, nice. Cliffhanger, Demolition Man, and Executive Decision, which we talked about on the podcast.
But he did a lot of fun movies from our childhood, man.
Right, but like I love it though. It's like, hey, what did you shoot? Oh, I did Legend. I did I did Labyrinth. Have you guys heard of those? Like I did Electric Dreams. But well, those are awesome, man. What else?
The recent Electric Dreams on Amazon Prime.
Oh no, this one in 1984. But then he's like, what else have you done? Well, I also shot Cliffhanger. And you're like, wait, what? I love this guy's career. And he also worked as a camera operator on he worked on, he was also, I don't know. I just love this guy's resume. He was a camera operator on Superman, but I don't know. I think
original Superman. Cool.
Yeah. Like this dude is really experienced, like has some beautiful work. And then the cinematographer I was looking up, Ashton Gorton, he also did like Blow Up, Get Carter, Rob Roy. I mean, this is a guy.
Rob Roy.
Yeah, man. Like this movie had some talent behind and in front of the scenes, and it seemed like Ridley Scott was able to achieve his 100% full dream. And You know what? I'm gonna keep. We say this a lot, and sorry if I keep plugging past episodes, but it just brings me to mind like Bram Stoker's Dracula, which we covered, The Happening. Those are movies, and Legend, right? I think those are three, and Event Horizon. Let's say it. Those are movies that happen when a director has kind of carte blanche
A
to
Cure for Wellness.
a cure for exactly. We have a style, don't we? Like those are movies that happen when a director's hot, and most of them don't even do well. Event Horizon didn't do
Right.
well. A Cure for Wellness didn't do
Right.
well. Bram Stoker's did okay. This one didn't do well. So it's kind of funny. We have this we keep talking about these movies, but The Happening that was disliked, but I think movies like that have a lot of personality and are quite divisive or become cult classics only happen when a director has that freedom. If that like does that make sense? Like
Well, because it's going to stand out more.
yeah. No, there's no notes. The
There are
full
going to be
vision.
fewer things will be homogenized, and the degree of homogenization for general audiences will be less.
And I mean, like let's say you moved into a neighborhood, John, with no HOA and no building constrictions on any house. You know how different the houses are going to be, the lawns are going to be. You know,
I'm
some
going
are
to have a bog castle.
exactly. Some are going to be awesome. Some lawns are going to be terrible. Some people are just going to make something really horrifying, but they're all going to have personality. But if you move into a place where, great HOA, keep everything organized, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just thinking this Legend's what happens when you have no HOA, which is a really weird thing to say. But I think that's why it's so memorable to me, at least. And we definitely seem to have a type, John, of movies we talk about here.
But, and there really are. There's so many movies that I know I enjoy a lot where I totally or that I don't. By the way, I was just having a conversation, no joke, today about the movie Moonfall with my coworker and how we both adore Moonfall. And if you saw storyboards for Moonfall, you'd be like, so this is a movie for teenagers, right? Or it's an anime for kids and young adults, right? But no, it's totally straight-faced, and you think that's never going to, and it works over and over and over again. Roland Emmerich was so good at that. Even with some of the scenes were pretty ridiculous in concept in Independence Day. They all work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
However, unfortunately for Roland Emmerich, and this is where when you homogenize, I think a little more. I think that when he did the sequel to Independence Day,
Oof. Yeah.
Resurgence, that felt like a lot of hands, or a lot of people were forcing his hand. And the funny thing that I said, again, to my coworker, it's like, how do I remember, not that I haven't seen it like 50 times, but how do I remember movies like Independence Day so well? And after seeing Moonfall only once at the time, remember it so well, or even after only twice, I remember it so well. So many things. The movie Independence Day Resurgence, I feel like I don't remember any more than if I just saw the trailer. And I sat and watched that. So the more homogenized. How about later Transformers movies? Not the first one. I think the first one's solid gold, by the way. You fight me on it. But the late, especially when we start to get into part 3, it's really heavy. Then into the later ones with like Mark Wahlberg, it's almost like nothing matters. I believe the way you would usually say it is just like blobs of CGI fighting blobs of CGI and nothing matters to me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the plot goes with it. Like I've seen the Mark Wahlberg Transformers. I can't even tell you what it's called right now. And I love Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. That's a good
but I think those are the opposite of the freedom that we're talking about. Even when it is Michael Bay, once he's doing his third or fourth Transformers, and now the budget isn't just $200 million, it's $350 million, and now there's so many people following it. Now the studio has more skin in the game, even though they should just let the director direct and the writers write, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is it. We're seeing what you get these movies that are the movies that we call forgettable. And just like in horror movies, when you have good characters, that's not typical, right?
Yeah.
Clearly someone cared and poured their heart into that. And if you let those characters be the way someone imagined them, we're going to remember them better.
Absolutely.
If only this could happen more often, but rich studio people don't like doing that.
And the problem is sometimes I think movies like Legend don't really help. Movies like Blade Runner don't really help. Movies like A Cure for Wellness, an Event Horizon.
Because the producers are only going to look at their theatrical performance. And I get it makes sense for their bottom line, I guess. I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No. You're 100% right. And I think, I was talking to my students today about the 2022 highest grossing movies. Only 2 movies in the top 15 are original properties, and that is Nope, and it's another one. I don't even remember, but they're new properties. The rest are sequels or IP or books. Like their studios want to lean that way. And it's kind of crazy. I think when movies like Moonfall come out, or movies that people want, like a Barbarian or something like that, like very original IP, people don't support them that much because it's not that. So then you keep getting really cool movies, really like this movie is like Legend, just an absolute sensory blasting Sixth Sense experience. You don't get the audience for those. And I get it though. I mean, if you're studios in your movie theaters, you want Doctor Strange 2. You want Thor 4. But it's nice. It's nice. Oh yeah. It's nice sometimes though when a movie is able to kind of sneak through and crack the mainstream. I mean, a lot of horror movies do that. I mean, Black Phone this year did that. I think
I did not see that, by the way. Strong recommendation on Black Phone?
This is weird. So you've known me for a long time, and you know that I know that horror movies really do borrow from each other. But for some reason, I really enjoy it. I think the kids' performances are great, but I think it's just, I think the director Scott Derrickson and Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, they found a way to synthesize every element of what makes horror movies popular and combine it really successfully. So as much as I like it, I never felt the high of an It Follows. I never felt just I never felt the end of Spring or the boat scene in Endless. I never felt an awe. I never really was worried, but I was constantly impressed by the kid performances in it and the way that it became a blockbuster success, and just the way it synthesized everything that makes, child endangerment, dogs, people with masks, kidnapping, kids with powers, it synthesized all that stuff that makes a Stephen King, Joe Hill horror movie work. But once again, I'm repeating myself, obviously, but yeah, I had no wow factor, but I've watched it about 6 times because I had to do a video on it.
While staying on this tangent of current horror releases and their impact on you, would you say that Barbarian did give you that high?
Yes,
I love the reaction. I saw Mark's reaction to that.
I have not been more thrilled by a movie, horror, action, drama. Maybe the last time I've been so thrilled by a movie, Take Shelter, which is like the early 10s, The Raid maybe. Barbarian is, Malignant did it to me. But Barbarian is I don't even want to talk about it. I don't watch a trailer, don't read about it.
Right. And I still haven't seen it, and I still haven't read it. I got to see it, but
I don't even want to read a review, because my review would just be like, go see it. It's Lasvath, the former host, one of our co-hosts on this, sent me a message today, and he was raving about it. But it takes chances, and I don't even want to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. But yes, it's thrilling to me, and it came out of nowhere. It's quite daring, and it's in my top 5. So is Moonfall, by the way. There's a gravity wave in Moonfall, and a limo or a car jumps, and then it lands on a floating piece of pavement, drives on that, then jumps off that.
But what's funny is that we basically saw something just like that in the movie 2012 and John Cusack's limo. But when I saw that, I was almost angry. I was laughing. I was having a good time with a bad movie, but I'm calling that a bad movie.
Yeah.
Whereas in Moonfall, when I saw that happen, I'm like, this is so ridiculous, and I love it.
Yeah. It's because 2012 took itself very seriously. Moonfall does not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but Moonfall doesn't take itself seriously, but it plays its hand with a perfectly straight face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there it is. It's very straight faced, but it also knows it's Moonfall, if that makes sense.
It's a 12-year-old trying to play poker for money with his dad and his uncles. We all know there's no way he's going to win, but we're going to enjoy seeing him try.
Yeah. But there's an unabashed, I'm not going to say dorkiness about it, but it's the guy from Game of Thrones, Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson going up to fight the moon. And that's what I want, right? That's what I want. Tim Curry as Darkness quoting about fleas on wolves. I want this unabashed. I don't want that self-consciousness a lot of times with my movies. Like, you can sense a self-consciousness. That's our Independence Day 2. You can sense it. My favorite experience feel like unabashed, ironic films, and I think that's what Legend is. I can see how it misses with many people, but for me, watching a fantasy movie, I think this hits. I mean, you know what's annoying, John? It's 90 minutes. It features beautiful set design, beautiful costumes. It features Tim Curry spouting wonderful dialogue. Well, like I'm saying, rocking all-time prosthetic makeup. It's just a visual experience. So as a fantasy film, that's a success to me. Like, I don't need the tightness of story. I guess because the mood. I think sometimes a movie can skate by on a flimsy plot when the mood hits you.
Mm-hmm.
And so just give me that. It makes me happy. So yeah, that's my long. I don't know. I went on a wrong tirade there, but that's why I love Legend. It took me a while to get there, but it's a barbarian of fantasy films.
The Barbarian of it. Like, another reason I got to see Barbarian, like yesterday.
I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about it. But
So Legend, by the way, so my girlfriend Sarah watched this with me twice, right? This isn't a joke. She's said this to me for years. It is her all-time favorite movie. After we watched the director's cut, and I didn't know which cut was which, by the way, for like which one had the original score or not, and which one had which kinds of scenes in it. There was a big difference, by the way. I noticed very readily, like, oh, this cut doesn't have these 4 scenes that are really cool to me, even if they're very brief. Like Gump and Brown Tom, like they're syncing their very different time devices, right? One of them's like a little glass thing with bubble gel in it, right? Or Gump trying to use his Fey magic to open the lock, but the iron is problematic to fairies. Like these are in one cut, not in the other. His riddles in one cut, not in the other. Tom Cruise using the shield to goad Mag Mucklebones by her beauty to look at her reflection. That's only in one of the cuts. In the other cut, she's just leaning over him, and then it's like he just caught her off guard with his sword and cut off the head. And don't get me wrong, if I had only ever seen that cut, I'd love that scene. But when I've seen the better scene, in my opinion, the more flavorful version, and most of these things that I'm mentioning, they are 5 to 8 seconds that were changed. And I'm thinking, why on earth were these like couple minutes removed?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like how did that were you really trying to shave off 1 or 2 or 3 minutes?
And why make your characters so like? Why not leave him tricking Meg Mucklebones? Because that shows character progression. Because he was just a naive woodsman, and so this shows he's becoming more of like a hero, or he's become maybe more of a liar. He's using tricks on the quest. Also with Lily, remember in the director's cut when he's like, "Don't go do the horse," and she's like, "I'm gonna go touch that horse." But then eventually she sacrifices herself. She thinks she's going to sacrifice herself for the horse to make up for what she did. That's character progression. But in the United States one, he's like, "Yo, don't go touch her," and she's like, "Oh, it'd be cool."
Right. So when we're watching that, Sarah. So when we watch the director's cut, by the way, she says, "Okay, but later in the week we're watching the theatrical cut, right?" I'm like, yes. She's like, "Okay, because we did not just watch my movie. Later in the week we're going to watch my movie." Right. Like that's how. In the scene where she does go to touch the unicorn, like you said, she was almost having an anxiety fit in front of me. She's like, "Wait, no, what? Like, wait, what?" Like she turns, like she hears Jack, and then she goes, she used the word, it's perfect word. Because when Lily hears Jack calling and turns, and then turns back and keeps doing the thing, it's defiant. It is throwing away his very worried warning. Whereas in the theatrical cut, it's as if she doesn't hear him. She's enamored by the idea, perhaps, combined with the sounds of the forest, her focus, she's just intoxicated by the beauty that's in front of her, right? She's just going towards the thing like a moth to a flame at its own detriment. So like that's a huge difference. But and then we did watch the theatrical cut with the different music and the different that scene especially. Even when the storm comes, the tone of the music's different. The opening shot of the forest and the bear, the music's a bit more effective. And so she said, that was my movie. That's my movie. So she's having, and I was commenting to her some of these differences. The Gump riddle, or I said that actually. She says, "Holy shit!" Like, yeah, I didn't remember the Gump riddle. And I was commenting about the Goonies.
Yeah.
The giant octopus in the Goonies
Disney
scenario.
Yeah.
Right, because she had seen a certain cut or heard people talking about things when she was younger, and she only ever saw actually the TV cut. She very staunchly says the TV cut it actually has the best of both worlds.
Huh.
In terms of the scenes that are or aren't included, or I should just say the scenes that are included. It includes more of these integral little moments, but it still has the Tangerine Dream.
Oh, okay. And I mean, if you think about it, you probably do need to expand it for the TV cut because it's a short movie. So you probably had to chuck in a couple scenes that's just to beef out the runtime of the film itself. Mm-hmm. So you probably had to do that and then add in a little bit more of the bits. But either way, it works. And you know what's interesting? I listened to someone who grew up in the UK listening to it, and then someone who grew up in America, and they both love their cuts because that's what they grew up with. Like that's, if someone showed me a different cut of Ernest Scared Stupid right now, I would be like, that's not my movie. And because I grew up watching that so much, but I like the Tangerine Dream score more, but I kind of lean towards them anyway because I have the Sorcerer album. Like I love the Near Dark stuff. So it's, I don't know. I like that vibe of it. And listen, we were talking about this with Nightbreed, and this is crazy. Everyone loves the director's cut, but the regular cut's fine because it's boom, 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 and then it's over. That's nice. Like it cuts out. It's like it goes for a very meat and potatoes approach, and I think I like those.
That's still very effective.
Yeah.
Still very effective.
I mean, we still love those movies, but yeah, no, this is what I'm all about. But no, I get it, man, and also I could see how Legend could be your favorite movie because it's different. Like it's short, and it's just, oh man, the look of it. I didn't watch this as a kid, but I would have loved to have caught this when I was 10, 11. Just seeing all of that for the first time and absorbing how, like, I think Ridley Scott also like it respected children to a certain respect because it's not an R-rated movie, but it's still very childish in some regards, but also not childish. It's very child friendly, but like it also challenges kids. And I think those were kind of the coolest fantasies for me. Ones that, like Coraline, right? Like I wish I could have watched Coraline as a kid. That movie would have tore me up. But I think it's fun to watch those adventures as a child. Like maybe that's why I love Ernest Scared Stupid so much. Maybe that's why I love Willow so much. I mean, Willow was a PG movie, but it's still quite heavy. So I don't know. I just respect that. So I could totally see watching this as a kid and getting on the vibe of it and being that part. Like, so yeah, I love it. I'm glad we got to talk about it. This was fun. Actually, really. Hey, you want to do something real quick?
Uh-oh.
Let's do a
1980s
fantasy draft.
Okay.
All right. So anything you want. You know, I would even count movies like The Last Starman or Last Starfighter. Those seem like fantasies to me. So just Goonies is probably even a fantasy movie because there's gold and all that kind of stuff. So whatever, you get first pick, but you get to go first.
Neverending Story.
Man, that scene with the horse. Ooh.
Yeah. For Artax.
Oh man. I'm not gonna take that because I feel like.
Take whatever you want. Take it. Just.
You know what? I'm gonna do Highlander because.
Oh, great choice.
I watched the TV show, and I watched this movie when I was really young. And I thought the gherkin, that's a pickle. The flurkin, no, that's a cat from Captain Marvel. The villain, Clancy Brown, like just scared the crap out of me. And the idea of chopping heads off. And it just felt so dark and so cool. And just, I love the idea of it. So I'm taking Highlander as my first pick. What are you going to do?
Can we just agree not to pick Legend?
You can have it.
No. I think it's more interesting if we circumvent it entirely.
All right, yeah, let's leave it out. What do you want?
Okay, so you picked. I'm sorry, I totally brain farted. What'd you pick?
I took Highlander.
That's such a good pick, by the way. I thought I was being clever. I'm gonna go Dark Crystal.
Ooh, Dark Crystal. That's a good one. Good puppetry. Okay, I don't. This one's gonna seem cheap, but John, and I hope it's not a cheat codes, but I'm taking Willow because that movie meant a lot to me as a kid.
Nope. That was in my back pocket for one of my next two choices.
Goblins,
absolutely.
Mad Mardigan. I mean, like Warwick Davis in that movie. Like I had never seen anything like that before. Just watching Warwick Davis carry the screen and oh man, the bad lady, what Bathsheba? Woo-wee. And the dude Beth Morda and the dude
Bavmorda, yeah.
And the dude with the sword for a hand, which was highly impractical, and the guy with the skull mask. I had all those toys. Oh man, I love Willow. So
yeah, we actually just watched that like last month.
Mad Mardigan's a beast. All right, what's your third pick?
All right, so you got Willow, Labyrinth.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good one.
I've got a theme going so far.
I'm gonna take Ladyhawke.
Okay.
I like Rutger Hauer, and I love the finale sword fight that is just big, and like Rutger Hauer was so committed, and Michelle Pfeiffer and just Matthew Broderick's constant narration. So yeah, I'm gonna take Ladyhawke. That's gonna be my third pick. So you're on your fourth.
Return to Oz.
That movie crushed so many souls. Right? That movie.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so many souls. Would you say Flight of the Navigator's fantasy or is that sci-fi?
I mean,
that's sci-fi.
I don't have a problem with that choice, but I think of it as sci-fi.
Masters of the Universe.
Great choice.
Frank Langella, crushing it. Master of the Universe. Dolph Lundgren, chicken.
Right. I'm specifically not picking Conan the Barbarian because I want to stick with my theme, and I'm glad I'm getting away with it. I want The Last Unicorn.
Oh, The Last Unicorn. Ooh, yeah, you do have a theme. Oh, wow, I played perfectly into that. I have a very sword-heavy movie.
Well, you see, normally that's what I would have picked, but I don't know. I just kind of rolled into this.
Man, that's like... So we both have two wildly distinctive... Mine's sword-heavy.
Dude, on a different day, I would have been Beastmaster, Conan, Dragon Slayer, Excalibur, Crawl.
Okay, I am not taking Princess Bride. That's cheating.
No, you did. I was thinking about taking that. It just didn't have enough child creatures for me.
Okay, is Big Trouble in Little China cheating?
Dude, I almost picked it. I wanted to stick with my theme. Absolutely.
It doesn't. There's swords in it. No, dude, I'm taking Beastmaster.
There are monsters. There's sword fighting.
I'm taking Beastmaster.
Okay.
All right, because that fits my. I mean, yeah, that's more sword heavy than Big Trouble has swords. Great swords.
Oh yeah.
But I feel like Beastmaster is sword heavy. So I'm going to do that. So Neverending Story, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Return to Oz, and The Last Unicorn. And then I have Highlander, Willow, Ladyhawke, Masters of the Universe, and Beastmaster. I like our themes.
So mine are the movies that someone watched, and then yours are the movies that they watched when they were 5 years older.
I mean, Labyrinth, man. I feel like the ones that you picked were the ones that scarred many children.
Well, I do like the thing. Well, it's funny because these are all, like you said, they're people who saw it once when they were a kid and now they're our age would think like, oh yeah, that was a kid's movie. Well, kind of. That's what I'd be like, yeah, like it is. And Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is PG. So like,
yeah. Oh, it's gosh. Man.
Right. Poltergeist, PG.
Gremlins.
So, right. So like, was it a kids movie? Like even the Neverending Story, like everyone cries with Artax dying. It's like, no, these are movies that are meant to almost be your transition into adulthood.
Yeah.
These are like the Pixar's Inside Out of kids movies. They're the kids movies that almost all have something that can make you really rattled and uncomfortable, feel almost awkwardly out of place or cry.
And the Gamork, remember the wolf from Neverending Story?
Oh yeah.
And Rottweiler. That's like when you see that when you're a certain age and you watch Neverending Story, you're not ever going to be that kid again.
Well, again, when you see that wolf, which by the way makes me think in a way of Fenris wolf from Norse mythology, like this almost world-destroying class of mythical giant wolf. But like I saw that again, that's one of those scenes where I saw that when I was younger, I'd always be like you're quiet, you're still, you don't make any sudden movements, your chest is tingling, your eyes are wide, like, whoa, that thing.
I still feel that movie in my bones.
When the Rockbiter is talking about what the world was like leading into the nothing and how all of his people are gone.
And the snail.
Mm-hmm.
And the wolf running. All right, that and the kid yelling. This was fun, man. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, just, you can find me John's Horror Corner, just about any kind of search you do. If you search for John's Horror Corner, you're going to come across my Twitter, you're going to come across my Instagram, you're going to come across my column on movies, films, and flicks.
Hatching, I got to watch it now. Thank you.
Honestly, Mark, I think that even if you overall don't like it, you will be very impressed with it.
Nice. So I can't wait. Yeah, I've been meaning to get to that. I saw your review and I read it and I'm like, okay, I need to do this. You wrote another review recently that got me watching a movie sooner than I anticipated. I forget what it is. But your reviews move people, John, and you get them watching movies. So yeah,
what could I have written that got you to see something sooner?
I forget what it was, but I went and watched it. We'll figure it out. But hey, John, thanks for joining me.
All right, have a good night.
All right, so for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, and for John Levengood, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.